dignitaries, and friends. I have the pleasure of complimenting Northeast Commission for Dialogue and Ecumenism and Northeast Institute of Cultural Research, Sanskriti, for organizing this great event. I wish to thank Father Dr. Jose Espiri for having me here right now as well. I thank Father Andrew for having me introduced to the audience. This very same day, 14 August, towards midnight, India, as an independent country, finds itself on the threshold of its 75th year of being. And tomorrow, 15 August, is all set for the glorious launch of the Amrit Mahotsav of Bharat. No doubt, it would mean celebrating India of my dreams. Well, the future of the nation, along with its past and present. On this auspicious occasion, it's indeed nice being here as citizens of a great country, even though on the virtual platform. It's a moment to salute the leaders and all those who have given their lives to make this country. And it's also our privilege, duty as well, to be visualizing what our country has to grow to be in the days and years to come. Bringing our minds together is the sure way to streamline the direction in which our country has to move forward. My discussion here is scheduled to focus on building a more harmonious India. First of all, in the very beginning, I suppose this land belonged to nobody but the Creator Himself. Maybe beyond the reach of memory onwards, our land had been witnessing a series of peoples and traditions coming in from African, Asian, and other roots. Later on, towards the end of Neolithic period onward, Dravidian, Indus Valley, Persian, and Aryan civilizations found them accommodated with each other here on one way or another. Further, the traditions of Indic origin, Vedic, Jain, Buddhist, and Sikh, managed to put up with each other in spite of all the odds on the way too. Besides, several religious beliefs and cultures like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Zoroastrian, and Baha'i joined the land from outside and got adopted here some way or other. Greek, Arab, Turk, Mongolian, British, and other dispensations of trade, rule, and mission at different times of history contributed their might to add to the essence of what India today is. At any rate, today, India is a land with a large collection of diverse peoples, and it's like a fruit salad with a mix of almost unlimited diversities all in one. It could certainly be considered an incredible episode in the entire world as well. Further, there is no denying the fact that in the process, there have been various major and minor tensions and mishaps of various types, time and again. All the same, it's a matter of great courage that the diverse traditions and cultures coexisted in India peacefully enough to arrive at this day, though in a more or less way. Ashok and Akbar are two remarkable names in the history of India. who are major icons of multi-religious goodwill and harmony. Ashok Chakra of the former is a symbol of righteousness that honors all religions, and Veer Ilaki of the latter was a multi-faith approach to living together in harmony. All the same, the citizens of the independent India, as members of diverse communities, do not seem to have learned enough lessons from the long and significant past to live like adult believers and citizens in a spirit of fraternity and mutual accord. Have we really matured and grown enough out of the immensely rich backdoor of civilizations, cultures, knowledge, and experience? Sweet ideals apart, we would have been living like a great paradigm of unity and diversity, and the entire world would have saluted us Indians with a standing ovation. Furthermore, in the wake of a variety of lessons from the foreign rules, we should have been conducting ourselves far better than the way we do now. But that has not truly happened, unfortunately so. Coming to the recent times, communal stress, divide and distance seem to have increased in the independent India for different reasons and in a range of ways. Individualistic, partisan, exclusive and extreme thinking, false propaganda, rape, hate speech, rivalry, lynching, social distancing among communities, and the like seem to threaten peaceful coexistence among the communities in India, very badly so. Needless to state that this communal or social virus is much more serious than the corona pandemic and is a matter of grave concern. Such a state of affairs has to be addressed in view of building a more harmonious India, beyond the celebration of the 75th year of independent India. Secondly, if truth be told, the past of our country has left the patent footprints of discriminatory policies and divisive principles, practices, even mass killings in the name of ethnic roots, caste, color, creed, class, culture, language, food habits, dress habits, social moods, and the like. Has our country grown out of these deadly symptoms of silly division? I don't think so. Of late, in the disguise of cow, nationalism, love jihad, terrorism, conversion, galapsy, conspiracy, rewriting history, Indianizing education, and changing names, certain foul circles are bent on polarizing the Indian society and on capturing power to rule over the country. In the process, the Indian society finds itself more divided and scattered, with less stamina for making an India that is harmonious and brighter. It's truly meritorious that a considerable number of people have moved forward from such negative concerns in various ways, and they need to be appreciated for. The vast majority of Indians are busy making their ends meet in various ways too. Even so, very subtle forms of discrimination and division seem to be very strong and active in most of the above ways. Obviously, discriminating communities and groups in terms of their personal choices has to end, sooner the better, in favor of a fair, just, and peaceful society of the post-platinum celebrations of freedom. Thirdly, I believe we are aware that we are celebrating the freedom of governance of 74 years in India. The dynasties of Mamluk, Khilji, Tughlaq, Sayyid, Lodi, Mughal, Turk, and the British are no longer ruling over our country. We, the people in India, are governing ourselves through a democratic process, and we are a sovereign country. Can we say that our internal governance is better than the external ones that have gone by? It cannot be denied also that the external rule, despite their private interests, had lots of good elements in it, and they have benefited India immensely. Have we shunned the unbecoming components of their rule? And have we kept up the plus points of their governance? To say the least, our country is totally in our hands. In our situation is our situation in any way like from the frying pan to the fire? In other words, at the central, state, and local levels, along with all the inner layers, to what degree our self-dependent India has good governance in place? I think this is a major area to be addressed in view of a new beginning from the Amrit Mahotsav of self-dependence. Fourthly, the political freedom India fought for and obtained is not merely a collective freedom to rule over the country. It's a freedom for every citizen and every community. However, it has to be noted that a vast majority of citizens are deprived of freedom of thought, choice, and expression, and of dignity in several respects. What's more, at least 25% of the population is really poor, even to the point of being homeless, foodless, needing clothes, and left without education, healthcare, and other basic needs of life. Bishop Thomas has highlighted this point right now. Until freedom is translated to guaranteeing the right of every citizen and every community in all the above respects, India cannot be considered really free. The Supreme Court of India has pronounced an articulate verdict recently. The freedom of the poor is no less than that of the rich. Freedom defies all considerations of majority and minority, high and low, great and small, man and woman, senior and junior, rich and poor, and the like. The idea of freedom rules out affiliation to different communities as well. These vital concerns require being attended to in favor of making harmonious living among citizens and communities a reality for today and ahead. Fifthly, the Constitution of India, in its preamble, articulates the salient features of the freedom we are celebrating today. India is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, and republic in its character. India is committed to secure to its citizens social, economic, political, and justice. India ensures liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. Further, India guarantees equality of status and of opportunity. India promotes among all citizens fraternity and dignity of the individual, along with unity and integrity of the nation. This outstanding ethos of the country has to be lived honestly, anew, not only for a liberated but for a harmonious India, along the lines of a holistic freedom and a grown-up life. Sixthly, India is claimed and acclaimed as a religious country. Almost all the major and minor religious traditions of the world are here. Most believers of all religions profusely indulge in rituals, pilgrimages, fasts, and other observances very scrupulously. The amount of time Indians spend in the name of religion is beyond calculation. even at the cost of work. Indians could go to the Guinness Book of Records for that matter as well. On the other hand, sadly to say, there's a very high deficit of ethics and values in both private and public life. Half-truths and full lies seem to have taken over the motto of the nation, Satyameva Jayate. Scientific temper and rational faith is a rare commodity. Most religions are under the firm grip of superstitions and are mostly blind as regards faith. No wonder between 60 and 80% of people is said to be fanatic, communal, and intolerant about religious matters, or are ignorant, disinclined, or indifferent towards people of other faiths. Governmental and administrative circles, both religious and political, require more capable leaders, honest, enlightened, principled, and committed to the larger good of the people. They have to live and promote inclusive principles and have to be value-based and democratic in the way they conduct themselves. They require standing above selfish, second-rate, and authoritarian ways in view of the larger well-being of the respective communities and the citizens of the country. Well, a restart or at least a refresh is called for, leading to dignified days ahead for the citizens and the communities as well as for the nation collectively. Finally, taking all communities and groups along, winning the confidence of all communities, ensuring the development of all communities is the 100 feet wide corridor to the real development and progress of India. I believe that's what is meant by Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Vikas. It has to be so in intention and action as well. What UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Social and Cultural Organization, stated in 1996, learning to live together as the leading pillar of 21st century education makes perfect sense here. Well, learning to live together with communities of all affiliations is the pathway towards a harmonious India, which should tag along the Platinum Jubilee of the celebration of freedom in India. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah. Let all be happy. अच्छे विचार कहीं से भी आए, स्वागत है. Good thoughts are welcome from all directions. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The earth is but one family. These are the street lights for the shared journey of the citizens of India towards building a developed, mature, and harmonious India. To conclude, as our dear homeland, India, celebrates Amrit Mahotsav of freedom, we wish the great prayers of Mahatma Gandhi and Rabindranath Tagore get realized. Sabko Sammati De Bhagwan. Oh God, give good sense to everyone. And into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. Thank you for your kind listening.